Everyone dreams about living an uncommon life, but how we define that dream is very different for each of us. And for most, it's a lifelong pursuit. Welcome to the Uncommon Life Project podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living that life or enjoying the journey to get there. We're going to also give you some tools, tricks, and tips for starting or accelerating your own efforts to live an uncommon life, a life worth celebrating and savoring. Please welcome your hosts, Brian Dewhurst and Philip Ramsey.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Uncommon Life Project. I'm your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Brian Dewhurst.
Thanks for tuning in. We've got an awesome guest for you, as we always do. But first, what do you want to say to the people, our followers, our listeners?
The year, as you're listening to this, should be over or close to it. Goodbye, 2020. We're ready for a new year.
Absolutely. Also, though, I have been talking to a lot of people when they really boil it down. It was a tough year, but they're thankful they got through it. And I feel like they've produced endurance and character that they wouldn't have had, that only trials can produce. And so I think this is something that, life is full of ups and downs. It's how you handle yourself when it's down that really shows your true character.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to get into today's guest, and he's really one of my favorite people. So let's go to the bio, and then let's just edify him all day long.
We've got
that cool.
The one and only Josh Dunwoody, ladies and gentlemen. Josh is the owner and founder of Tactical Advantage Business Solutions. His work is focused on helping business owners and leaders create clarity from the chaos that often comes with owning and operating a business. His experience in strategic planning, holistic business development, and process development are derived from his work in organizations, many different kinds and sizes. He also holds a master's degree in organizational leadership. And when he is not working with business leaders, you might find him serving in the Iowa Army National Guard. Thank you for your service. And where he is company commander for the Alpha Company, the first 168 Infantry Battalion. You can tell that I was not in the military. Josh is also very active in his church and as a husband and as a dad, and also on the Altoona Chamber of Commerce. So he is a busy bee. Thanks for being on the show. Josh Dunwoody, everybody.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny when we talk about leadership, that is like a trigger word for me that I get all hyped up on. Mm-hmm. Where do you think that started in your life where you're like, hey, actually, God's given me this gift of leadership? That's where I want to start.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's funny because my wife just brought this up a couple weeks ago. It really, I think the passion was really something that it took me a while to really come to grips with or to own. I remember all the way back in school where, teachers would say things and, hey, you're a leader. And I didn't like it, didn't want to care about that. I was busy, playing sports and doing stuff like that. And I do remember, a time late in high school, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I can kind of see this, I want to own this. And then God just put some great people into my life, in different chapters of my life who were passionate about the same thing and came alongside me and helped develop that. Not only develop my leadership, but develop my passion for it. And then hopefully at this point in my life, I'm starting to return that and pay it forward.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
What do you think the best quality for a leader to have is?
Best quality for a leader to have? That I would probably answer that differently at different times in my life. Right now, I would probably say decisiveness.
Right.
The ability to make a decision and own the consequences, learn and move
Good
on.
or bad? Owning?
Absolutely. Yep. Assess and then move on.
Do we really need any more? That's why I love this guy. So
let's keep it short and sweet.
Okay. Thanks for being on the show. I really want to jump into how you do things at Tactical Advantage Business Solutions, how it started, all that stuff. But I just want to caveat this up front. Brian and I have benefited from your work there, and you've helped us in our business create processes, job descriptions, things that you normally don't think of as a business when you first start it. But once you get them in place, how easily and more smoothly it's run. So one, thanks for helping us. And then two, Amen. I want you to get into every business out there because it's needed. Mm-hmm. And you don't even know what you don't know until somebody like you comes in, starts doing some evaluation and seeing like, well, why don't you have this in place? Well, I didn't know I needed it. Mm-hmm. So,
and especially I always think about Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant.
Right.
And just the 4 boxes of, your employed, self-employed, business owner, investor. And I think so many people are in that self-employed trapped box and they want to get to business owner, and without like what you're doing and the thought process you're taking people through, it's very difficult to cross over that bridge.
Yeah, and that's a great way to. I mean, that's a great way to couch this, because you see this a lot with business owners who invest, sometimes decades of their life building this business, and they don't realize till the very end that what they essentially have is a job. I mean, sure, they're the boss, but they're also maybe the only employee or one or two, and they go to sell it, and there's just nothing to buy because they haven't paid attention to how you build this as a business, the processes and the product and the potential for profit that a business owner would want to buy.
Right.
And it's heartbreaking, right? Because they realize it too late, and that was kind of their. I mean, you guys probably see it where that was part of their investment strategy.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden, there's nothing there.
Yes. Totally. And just knowing that is such a scary thing or exciting thing to get people in the business of like, I want to really flex my giftings or I want to pour into me as a best asset, but then not understanding what they could do during the business to make it more sellable on the way out for the exit strategy. Man, it's something that I wish we would have done a little bit sooner, but I'm glad we're here, We're here now.
Well, and really I think about that as the icing on the cake. I mean, the stuff that I try to work with businesses, it improves your efficiency and frankly your profitability now.
Right.
That's why I jokingly term it killing the chaos. But a lot of the stuff that business owners struggle with and that it just feels frenetic and they're always putting out fires, is because they're not capturing the systems and the repeatable tasks they could be doing, so they can minimize their energy and investment in those and maximize it on more creative tasks and actually developing their business.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I want to just take a step back. So tell us what Tabs is, and give us a little commercial so people and listeners can hear this. Yeah.
So what I try to do, what I'm passionate about doing, is working with business owners to help them develop systems, structures, strategic planning, and things like that for their business. I think it came out of my experience working in lots of different organizations, and I saw it in small businesses, in large organizations, where you see that people, without paying attention to this, it's the chaos, but it's also people don't like this. They don't think about it. You mentioned just a second ago, we didn't think about it. That's almost everybody I talk to, and there's lots of reasons that people don't do that. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's not whatever. I mean, we all like to spend our time talking about sales and marketing and idea innovation and all these things that are fun. I mean, think about it. Every third workshop seminar you go to is on how you leverage social media for your business these days, right?
Yeah, right.
What you don't hear is, hey, have you checked your organizational structure lately? What's your strategic planning process? And it's not that fun to talk about, but I started to see in my own experience, I would work in these businesses and I would look around and think, man, we waste a lot of time because we have 4 different processes to try and get the same result.
Right.
And everybody does it their own way.
Stop talking about me, Josh.
Well, I mean, yeah, we've had these conversations, right? And these people I worked in this one organization. I mean, it was a $10, $12 million company. They were making good money. They had good market share and absolutely no idea how to run an efficient, effective business. I thought, man, if they just employed a few of these principles, they would crush it.
Right.
And that was the last place I worked before I started this, and really that was kind of the tipping point. It wasn't just that one; there was a couple others that I saw. But man, if I could help business owners see that, help them help themselves, and just come alongside for a while, it would be a massive benefit for everybody.
Right. I have a question for you, because I've noticed this as my family expands, and we just bought a dog, and now I'm like training a dog. But I think like 90% of the chaos just comes from organization and having like a system. Like everything comes back to organization or communication, like 95% of it.
Agreed.
Do you think you got that from the military background, or was it even before that with like your parents and your childhood? Because it's not something that they teach you in school, I think, necessarily, like how to be organized or how to develop these systems. Like for you, where did that come from?
That's a good question. I haven't thought a lot about that. I would say that it was that perspective. I mean, we all have our own perspective, right? We all have our unique giftings, and those things play themselves out in different ways. I think that was there. I would absolutely say that the military has refined, and I think there's a lot of cross-pollination between my military work and my business work, and I lean into that. I think there's a lot of benefit. The military is one of the most structured and organized institutions in the world, so I think I leverage that. But I think I think it was me taking a long time to realize what I had to offer. And that was the touch point. And shout out to you guys, frankly. when I was kind of at that career crossroads saying, what do I do? And you guys suggested this path. It was me looking back at my career to that point and saying, what is the common thread that winds between all the different experiences I've had? And I started to realize that this was it, bringing clarity and organization, developing policies and systems that helped organizations run at maximum efficiency and maximum profitability. And so, I don't know if there was a time that the light bulb went off, but I think it was, like a lot of people, a development and an evolution over time.
Yeah, right. I think this would be a good time just to plug about what Brian and I do, because I feel a lot of times our listeners are like, well, why don't you talk about what we do? What we do to sit down with people like Josh and his wife and try to create a customized plan with their unique giftings and how they can invest in those type of giftings. And so when Josh is talking about that, I'll never forget that meeting of just talking through of like, finally we're at the point where I think we need to talk to advisors. And then also like how excited they got after we got done talking to them, seeing that they had control of the future. It wasn't us trying to take your money and put it in some account that you guys couldn't access to until you retired. It was actually the opposite of how can we give you access to your own money to then pursue your dreams and giftings now so you can love your life tomorrow.
Well, and that's what I love about what you guys do. I think you almost look at financial advising backwards where, what do you want to do? And then how do we build a plan to make that happen now, as opposed to, like you said, kind of building this pot of gold into the rainbow.
Right.
And that's, walking down that uncommon path with you guys has brought us here today. So
I think when you solve for tomorrow, 10, 20, 30 years takes care of itself,
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay. Here's what I want to go back to what you do, because how do you get into businesses when they don't even know they have a problem? I mean, I kid you not, and I'm not just trying to bolster you because I love you and I got kind of a man crush on you.
He's in your top 5.
Right, for sure. These people don't even know. I think that you can help any business that you go in, because all these people do, and I would say we are totally victim of this, is we are working in the business. We take maybe let's say an hour and a half every week to try to work on the business, but have somebody like you come in and only see the business from a high level perspective is so valuable. That's why I think that you really do. You could help any business out there because you're taking an objective approach, hearing about systems and strategies, and in your brain and how you're wired, you're like, oh, I do this, and that, and this different. Why don't we just do that? And it's amazing and beneficial to all businesses. So how do you do that? Because a lot of businesses just don't even know they suck at it, or they don't even know they have a problem. So how do you get into those businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if I had a 100% answer, I'd be a lot happier. So let me back up a second. I think there's lots of reasons that people don't do this, right? In my conversations. I mean, some people, like you said, some people just don't know it. And then I'm in the same boat as every other business owner where you have to define the problem before you can say, hey, I've got a solution for that. And it's really the business of solutions for people's problems. But there's a whole nother group of people that a lot of people just don't like it. I mean, you think about it, people are, maybe they started a coffee shop because they're super passionate about coffee, and they could tell you by tasting if it's from Guatemala or Costa Rica or whatever. And they're, they know exactly what decibel to turn the music to have a great coffee. They know all these things.
Right. Shout out to Scott Larson.
Great. I mean, it sounds like he's one of those people.
Yeah, he is.
But when it comes to how do I sustainably bring this to market for the next 10 years, their eyes glaze over. That's just not how they're wired. Right. So I feel like I have a lot to offer in that perspective where, hey, let me come alongside you. Maybe it's for a short period of time. Maybe it's a longer period of time. And let's make sure that this is a viable market offering for years and years to come, because what you bring is unique. People want it. Let's figure out how to do that. And I think some people, frankly, just don't have the time. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Small business owners especially, which is kind of my passion, are just incredibly busy people.
Yeah.
And they might recognize the value. They might care about it. And at the end of the day, they've been putting out fires, trying to pay employees, deal with customers. There's just no time left for it.
Yeah.
So I think my ability to come alongside them, again, for whatever part of the journey makes sense for them, to either, put them on a path, or, a lot of times it's just the accountability. Hey, I'm going to be here next month. Here's our, 2 or 3 action steps. I'm going to ask about this. Let's make sure, like you said, I mean, you guys are better than most. If you're devoting an hour and a half a week to business development, that's better than a lot of business owners are able to do.
Yeah. The other thing I think I'd say is and if you know us, Philip and I are very different, which is a good thing. But we have each other a lot of times to bounce things off of. And a lot of business owners are out there on an island.
Yep.
their spouse isn't a part of the business or doesn't want to be, they don't want to hear about it when they come home. And so I think too, sometimes, we've talked about this a lot, but you're almost like a counselor too, of like, I just want someone else's perspective on what I'm dealing with. We get that a lot as well. Mm-hmm. But I think, like we had a business coach at one point, and it's great to talk about the high level, but then, you got to get into the game and win the X's and O's mm-hmm. every day, and I felt like that was kind of the part we were missing in our business that you've helped, shore up is the X's and O's, because we got to run those plays every day.
Exactly. And that's, I call the business Tactical Advantage partly because I felt like this kind of industry, this coach consultant industry, was a lot about developing these 30, 40 page high level strategic plan. I drop it on your desk. I ask for a giant check and I walk away and you don't do anything with it. It sits on the shelf until the next time you say, man, we need to hire, and it's just this vicious cycle.
Right.
Well, what does that mean? Like, what do I need to do tomorrow? Yeah, you need the overarching strategic plan, of course. But what do I need to do tomorrow to make sure that I'm hitting my quarterly checkpoints, my annual checkpoints, and we're ultimately on path with where we want to go with this thing?
Yeah.
And I feel like you're exactly right. Too few people are giving that in a real tangible and executable way.
Yeah.
So I want to go to the application, and then I have way more questions. Of course I do. So give us like a high level of what you're seeing now in the small to medium-sized business that you have seen a lot of. It's kind of you're seeing it multiple times.
I would say, well, maybe I'll divide those two. I think in small businesses, I see a lot of small businesses that run like small businesses. So I think a lot of small business owners, because of the virtue of usually the first couple of years of starting a business, they make the mistake of operating their business like a small business. So they don't take time to think through, how do I build a scalable structure from day one that as we have the capability to grow, we can grow steadily, sustainably, and in a way that makes logical sense. So they end up in year 5 saying, okay, we've actually got something here. Now you've got to do this massive
retrofit almost.
Retrofit. It's a great word for it of, okay, we're a real business now. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. And so you're starting over in the middle. And it's easy to do, right? I mean, you start your business, it's you and an idea, and you wear all the hats, and then maybe you and a friend, and you do all these things.
5 years later, you look up, and what did we just create?
Exactly. Yeah. And now what do we do with this thing?
Right.
But to go back to your small, medium, I think, again, it comes back to a lot of paying attention to really capturing the best and most efficient ways to deliver whatever your product or service is. And that changes over time, right? This isn't like a one and done. This should be, one of my favorite ways to do it is with process mapping. So how do you identify your core functionality of your business, whatever it is that brings your product or service to market? And how do we assess from time to time, are we delivering this in the best way possible based on, changing market conditions, changing customers, whatever? Yeah. How do we do that in the most profitable way over time?
I want to go back to your coffee example. I was in a coffee shop recently, and I'm going to leave names out, but coffee shop that we like, know and like, really, mom and pop deal. And we just, as business owners, like, hey, they know that we own our business, and it's like, hey, how are things going? And he's just like, yeah, it's been really hard, but, we're staying open, staying positive. But he's like, we got 6 coffee shops coming in within a 5-mile square radius and like 2 Starbucks. Like one on one side, one on the other side.
They're coming in.
And it's just like, man, if that isn't, like, if you've got to have your ducks in a row in that type of, you mentioned coffee, and it's just like, it seems like there's one on every corner, but it's got to be a dogfight type business, of like, how do we process this, and how do we have a competitive advantage against 2 Starbucks and 2 other mom and pop shops? So can you talk to our listeners about how you're helping maybe business owners think about that type of stuff, or just keep things running efficiently?
Yeah, and I think your example of Starbucks is really poignant, because the reason Starbucks are coming in on both sides is because they figured this out decades ago. Right. It's a franchise, right? So they figured out the secret sauce. This is how you deliver this product with maximum profitability in a way that customers like. We solve a problem that customers have, and they do it all over the place. And I think that, and we've talked about this before, that franchise mindset, whether or not you really want to franchise your business is irrelevant. Right. But in order to build it in a way that, hey, if I wanted to do another one of these, I could, because I've figured out the best way to do what I do in every area of my business. Yeah. Because you're right. I mean, what I'm all about at the end of the day is, predictability equals efficiency equals profit, right? So if you're not able to run at maximum efficiency, you're not going to make it, particularly right now where the economic environment for small businesses has arguably never been more challenging, at least not in recent memory.
Right.
And that's where, if you didn't have that figured out, in a sense pre-COVID, you're struggling.
Yeah. Right.
That's a great point.
It's kind of that E-Myth book. We've read. It's just like, try to figure out early on how to franchise your model so you won't just create a job for you.
Exactly.
Imprisoned, doing the same thing, baking cakes.
If you've ever watched that movie, The Founder,
yeah,
I mean,
that's a good one.
Like what he did and what he saw, it really puts, I think, the power of the systems in place for what McDonald's and Ray Kroc was able to accomplish. I want to take a tangent, though. I love talking to Josh because you love business. And there's a lot of people out there that just like business, and they're looking for businesses, and they're maybe don't like where you had the idea or, I want to start something else. But they do want to buy a franchise or they do want to buy a business. And we're getting a lot of these conversations. People want to buy a business, or how do I sell my business? And then what do I do with the money after I sell it? What are you seeing, or what are you interested in terms of, business purchases, business acquisitions amidst kind of this time when there's a lot of people, living in fear, and I don't know if what the future's going to hold, and is this our new normal? What are you kind of seeing or thinking out there?
Well, I mean, I think I can speak from personal experience here a little bit. I mean, my wife and I are, actively right now looking at purchasing a business, and it seems like a counterintuitive move and kind of a what in the world are you doing that for? But, there again, I'll plug you guys. We've talked about this at length, and even with my, I would say, confidence in what I bring to the table, I also recognize there's things I don't bring to the table or I'm not as confident in, which is why I reached out to you guys to say, hey, am I crazy? Does this make sense? Do the numbers add up?
Right.
And we've had a lot of conversation about that. But I think there's opportunity in these times. And if you're able to, and if you're willing to take the risk, I think there's a lot of opportunity to stay in that. And I think what I'm hearing is it's not as bad as you would think it would be. People are buying businesses right now, and some small business owners are thriving.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's consistent with what you're seeing or if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but.
and I think, for me, it's deeper. I think, I heard a statistic, so I'll caveat this. I don't know 100% how accurate this is, but in generality, I think it's probably pretty fair. Like in 1900, it was like 80 to 90% of the country was self-employed. And now we're like 8 to 10% self-employed or business owners. I think you're going to see that flip back with Uber and kind of all of these work from homes. We have a lot of contractors that work for us instead of hiring them as employees. I think just that our generation, the 25 to 45, is kind of like, yeah, I've worked for 5 companies. I think I could just do this on my own and make what I was making, and at least I have control of my lifestyle.
Oh, so true.
And so I think, and my gifting, and I'm passionate, I can't stop thinking about this stuff. That sort of thing. So I think we're seeing kind of that revival and resurgence demographically.
And I think people are feeling this sense of uneasiness of like, maybe I'm not as safe as I thought.
Right.
And if you really think of it, I love this when we ask this question to new prospect clients is like, how much money do you think you've made your company in the lifetime that you've worked there? And their numbers start clicking along and like, oh boy,
right.
It's a company that is using you for their benefit, which is not bad, by the way. And some people are wired that way. But if you can start building processes for your own and own your own company, you could see how not only are you going to be more excited about it, but you're also going to have a little bit more control than you do now. And so that's what I love about, especially you and now your wife are starting to look at other businesses. I love that you're using both you guys as giftings because your job is tabs and that's what you're good at.
Yeah.
And I love that model. And then now this next one is potentially something that your wife can step into and start running and using her giftings. And together you guys can use both of your giftings for the greater good of the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I love about it because people are like, do you work with business owners or individuals? Like, well, individuals own businesses. So we're kind of both, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But not a lot of advisors do help business owners actually show how their business is going to help them or hurt them in retirement.
Right.
And it's a big component. A lot of people are just asking them about, okay, well, your 401k is going to do this or that. Like, well, what about the exit of your business? And so,
well, and 401ks are so impersonal. Like, I don't control that. I give you my money and I hope you do good things with it, and you hope that the market does good things with it, and We hope that something happens at the end. I mean,
see at 60.
Yeah, exactly. And at least I think, again, what I liked about what you guys do is you are able to say, hey, you could harness the power of this now and also bring back some of that control, still planning for the future, not just, it's not just a wild tangent. If it's a bad idea, you can tell us. But if you do this now, you can still get to where you want to go and have control of how you get there.
Right. Okay, I want to go a little bit more in the personal side because you do have another job.
I do.
The military, and it is not a small job. So how has that affected or helped or hindered or your current position with Tabs, owning and running a business, now with that? How has that challenged or helped?
I would say both. It's obviously a very challenging to balance them and to try and do them both well. I would say I think they've been mutually reinforcing. I think they each make me better at the other. But there's seasonality to it, and I have to own control of my business like everybody else. So, I mean, for example, right now I'm on some temporary orders full time with my military work, and so I'm doing that 40 hours, 50 hours a week. And I have to shift my business into kind of a different model for a short period of time, where I'm still, managing clients, but in a different way, and then, be able to flex back with that. So it's challenging, but it's kind of like what we talked about, that because I own the business, I'm able to do that and make both of those things, which I'm passionate about both of them. I'm
right.
proud of the work that I do in each, and I wanted to create a life that would allow me to do both. And
right.
And this has given me the ability to do that, like many small business owners.
Right.
So the first couple years of Tabs hasn't been easy.
Nope.
Because no business is. But would you trade it? Would you go back to
great
the
question.
paycheck and the seemingly, like sensible, I got a job, I have benefits, like this is the safe thing to do? I'm curious.
That's a great question. In full disclosure, there are trade-offs like everything else in life. I mean, the predictable paycheck is pretty nice. That's why, so many people are tied to it, and I completely understand that. I will answer it like this and tell you, I don't regret it. I would not have grown as much as I have in the past couple of years had I taken the opportunity that I had at the time to just go with another job.
Mm-hmm.
I would be living a much different life with a different perspective, and I don't think I would have wanted that result.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely an adventure. It was not easy. There's no shortcut to starting a business. You guys are well aware of that. I'm sure this audience is acutely aware of that as well. But it's really hard to learn the lessons. I think you opened up with this. Without the adversity, you just don't get the opportunity for development and growth. And to be able to learn those lessons vividly and firsthand it's irreplaceable. It's hard to replicate outside of just taking the journey.
Priceless. What do you think your family has, one, sacrificed, and then two, learned from your journey of this uncommon path?
I think the sacrifice is the predictability and the security. I mean, particularly during that first year where, the idea was sound. I got great feedback from the market that people wanted this, but at the end of the day, nobody knows who your brand is. It's really hard. And I made mistakes too, like everybody else. I bumped up against, I'll bring this product offering. Well, nobody's really resonating with this. So, it takes a while to kind of bang around the market. I had, dozens of conversations. I've drank coffee in almost every coffee house in the metro, and met awesome people and kind of gotten that feedback. So there's no shortcut to that. And it was hard. It's very difficult to have that level of unpredictability. So I think the sacrifice is real. I know that. But I think there again, in the greater context of our life, it was the journey. It was the adventure. My wife was on board from day one, said, yeah, we need to do this. This is what you're wired to do. I'm in. We were all in. And so I think that was incredible.
Right.
I've heard it on your podcast before. I mean, without that, kind of
support,
without that support, without her being all in, I wouldn't have even considered it. And I'm glad I wouldn't have, because had I gone against her and had that experience, it would have been
do it.
I think that's so much too of what we do is just helping, couples stay shoulder to shoulder as opposed to pointing fingers.
So important.
And stepping into some of these decisions, as an usness decision, is just so important. And I had another question. I totally forgot it. Oh, I got it.
Let me say one more thing on that. I will say it reinforced. I mean, my wife is a rock star, and she's always been up for the journey, always up for the adventure. And so, I think it's easy to get just focused on your business. Your business is a part of who you are.
Right.
Like it gets woven into the greater
Right.
tapestry of your life and how you're defining your life and the stories you get to tell your kids and the things you tried. And so it fit perfectly in our adventure, good, bad, and indifferent. And I mean, man, she's always been up for the adventure, and it's just made our life and our marriage together just so much more fun. So anyway.
Yeah. So I think you have an interesting perspective. You obviously have a strong faith. And I think, going into the military has got to challenge your faith. I've spoken to other military guys about this. You're away from your wife. You got orders. You got to do this stuff. You're around people that maybe don't share the same values. And then you kind of start a business, largely in the midst of COVID. Can you just talk about how your faith has been strengthened through kind of the military and starting tabs and what that's done? And conversely, maybe where you would have been had you not had those inputs?
Yeah, I tell you what, I would not be the person that I am spiritually without these experiences, because I mean, the dependence that you have to have on God and understanding his will for your life and the path that he's charting. I mean, there's so many times when you wake up and you're like, what did I do?
Right.
What was this decision? I think understanding that my wife was on board, but more importantly even than that was knowing that this was God's call, because I tell you what, it's not going to make sense every morning.
Right.
And it's not going to you're going to think that you have just blown up your entire life. The ability to have confidence in the fact that God, I didn't join the military till I was in basic training. I was 29, which is a whole nother story.
Right.
But started way late. It was something God laid on my heart from a super young age. I thought the dream was dead, and it came up late.
Wow.
And hard decisions. I had my third kid 6 months before I left for basic training. I mean, that's a whole nother story about some deep conversations about the life that we were going to create and what God wanted to do. So each of these major touch points has forced me to dive deep and say, hey, God, what do you want me to do? I don't want to blow up my family. I don't want to blow up my life. But there's been some all-in moments that have been just fundamentally developmental for me and my spiritual maturity. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thanks for
So
sharing.
good. Okay, so this is why, first, I'm sure our listeners like, how do I get a hold of this guy? So how can they read more about you, get more on your train? Like, how do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Probably the easiest place is my website, www.thetacticaladv.com. That'll take you to my Facebook page. It'll take you to Instagram. I've got some videos up on a YouTube channel. I've got content there. There's a lot more about, my perspective on business, what I do, and how you can get a hold of me.
Nice. Also, I want to say this, because after COVID, people are looking at their business in a very different way.
Absolutely.
And what you're doing is basically being the COO for companies without that price tag. And I'd say fraction of hiring a COO. And I'd almost say a better COO, because you're coming in from a high level. You're giving them options and giving them a clear path of objective things they need to do differently. And then you come back in and just make sure everything's running smoothly. So they're getting all the benefits of a COO, but then they're taking ownership of that COO position, but they don't necessarily have to create the plan. That's why I think it's great.
Yeah, and I want to touch on two things you said there. Number one, you're absolutely right. And that was my passion to do this, because I felt like the small business community was largely left out of this. They need the same organizational development concepts that, the principal needs. Right. But the principal can afford to have probably a whole department of people that do what I do constantly for that organization. Small business owners can't do that.
Right.
So how do I bring that, how do I concentrate these large organizational development principles in a way that works for small businesses, that makes sense, and that they can afford? So that's exactly, what I try to do. You said something else there that was really good that I can't remember what it was.
Probably amazing.
It probably was. It's probably the best thing I was going to say the whole podcast, and now I forgot. Anyway, yeah, that's exactly what
I just think it's so nice, because also they have to take responsibility. Oh,
that was it.
Okay.
That was it. Thank you. We're on the same wavelength. No, I just wanted to say that one of the hardest things about you guys have got to see this too. One of the hardest things about working kind of in this space is when you can see what they need to do, it will make their lives and their business exponentially better, and they don't do it. Like, there's no magic pill. At the end of the day, My role is to lay out a clear plan, clear action steps, and show them how exactly this will help them what they need to do. But man, you've got to want to put in the work. At the end of the day, it's still not my business, know, and that's hard. I know I had a client a while back that I gave her my best stuff every single time, and every week I came back. Did you get that done? No, I didn't even touch it. I don't know where that's at.
Right.
It's nothing more frustrating. There's not even value in it. Then I start to feel guilty. Like, why are we even meeting? There's no value in this if you don't want to do this. So super critical for business owners, even if they engage, and they should. We all should. I should.
Right.
A coach or a consultant. But man, you've got to be willing to take what they say and run with it.
Mm-hmm. So good. Man, thank you for your time. It has been a pleasure. And honestly, and I mean this sincerely, hire taps, because I think there's so much more potential that you can get out of the rat race of your day-to-day
definitely
things that you need to do, and hire somebody to that is honestly, that's their gifting. So
Bill, I've been thinking about this a lot, because we work with obviously a lot of business owners and smaller business owners, and it's like, if you can have one business and you can systematize it like the first McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just did that, you would have something to sell. And if you own the building, you have 2 assets.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could then just replicate it 10 times, not the next Starbucks or McDonald's, but just 5 to 10 of them, I mean, you're multi-millionaire.
Absolutely.
If you could just figure that out. And I think we've all been in those businesses, and you're just like, this should be a franchise. Like, this is the only one? This is amazing. Like, we could put these in 10 cities, tomorrow. I think we've all had those experiences. When you experience a really good business, you're just like, oh, wow, that felt good. I want to go back there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're really helping business owners trying to create that and lock that down and, mint that. And so I think you get a sense of Josh's character and perspective and heart, through this podcast. And you've definitely enriched our lives and our business. So thank you. And thank you for your service, in the military, and all you do for our country too. So.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here today, guys. And likewise, I would say, what you guys do has benefited me. So it's been a joy to work with you. And I'm glad our paths have crossed on our own business journeys.
Good deal. Well, you've been listening to the Uncommon Life Project. I've been your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I am Brian Dewhurst.
Until next time, go be uncommon. Thanks.
That's all for this episode of the Uncommon Life Project, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.